Well, we were talking about your first, which is included in the Dead Sea Scrolls and the First Christians, and of course that there you have another title that is very eye-catching, and anybody who's trying to discover, they got to pick up that book.
Well, the book you're speaking about is the first book I really ended up writing after appearances at the Society of Biblical Literature, where the first paper I did was James the Just as Righteous Teacher. That was in 76 or so, and I went to a few more, I gave a few more papers, and then by 82, 83, I was writing this Maccabees, Zadokites, Christians, and Qumran. And really, I'd written it in 79, 80, I was on sabbatical at Oxford. It was supposed to be a short article, but the footnotes turned out to be so long that the actual article itself was about 30 to 25 pages, but the footnotes were another 60 pages or something like that. So Brill published it as a pamphlet, and I was happy about that. So we recollected all these things in the Dead Sea Scrolls and the First Christians when I got pretty well known, but that wasn't until the late 90s that we came out with this book. I'm not sure people know this Dead Sea Scrolls and the First Christians is out there that much, but they won't even put it out in paperback, which really surprises me. I mean, these publishers really don't have any brain. That's all I can say, because it's one of the better books I've written.
It really is. It really is, and the fact that it's got those 3 Dead Sea Scrolls translated in there, and I don't know when anybody get all of your translations.
Yeah, this is the book we're talking about.
Yeah, that's it.
Dead Sea Scrolls and the First Christians.
Yeah, and the translations in there are worth the book itself. To me, they were. To read those and think about what those.
Well, I had to do those translations because the current translations were really inadequate and somewhat misleading. And it was important to get an accurate translation in the way that not a poetic and not adding your own ideas, but just what was said, and also emphasize a few of the main points with either italics, footnotes, capital letters, or something, so that people could, and put the Hebrew in. I'm the only one who ever put the Hebrew next to the text, because publishers said, oh, the public doesn't want to know the Hebrew. I said, yeah, they do, because they want to be able to check and see that you're not lying to them, so they can take a little passage and go look at it. And now all the Qumran establishment puts the Hebrew and the English in there. So I took the 3, what I considered main documents that I had to use all the time and had to make my own translations of. And that's the Damascus document, what's called the Habakkuk commentary, or the Habakkuk Pesher. It's not really a commentary, it's analyzing Habakkuk in terms of the contemporary world they were seeing in the life of the community. And Habakkuk is a basic text in Christianity. Habakkuk 2:4, maybe people don't realize it, is one of the foundation pieces of Christian theology. The righteous shall live by his faith. And as Christianity understands it, Jesus is both the righteous one, and you become righteous by living by your faith in him. So it's a double-barreled sword. That and the one from Genesis 15:6, his righteousness was counted as justifying him, or something to that effect. So Abraham's righteousness.
And by this time, or shortly thereafter, we get James, the brother of Jesus.
Well, yeah, that was the biggie, and that book is what I'm known for. It's this book here. It's still out in paperback. It's got a really nice cover, actually, and it was published by Penguin, which is a pretty big fat book, 1,000 pages for Penguin, and that would never have gotten printed without Bajan and Lee's Dead Sea Scrolls Deception, because it was because of the whole controversy over the scrolls and their introducing me in Dead Sea Scrolls Deception that Penguin was dying to have this particular, or was prepared to have at least, this particular book. I don't think they knew it was going to be 1,000 pages. In fact, we cut a good 500 pages out of it, and that appeared in the second book, the one some of you have seen, the New Testament Code, which is really part 2 of the James, the brother of Jesus.
Yeah, but that first one, the James, the brother of Jesus, is where you identified, and as well as I remember, James the just as the righteous teacher.
Not just identify him as the righteous teacher, but pull him from the obscurity in which he was either purposely or accidentally thrown by the church hierarchy as it developed. So I give all the sources for James. I show that James was the successor and the election to succeed Jesus, if you want to call him or it that. And it's the parallel to the way the Gospels portray the election to fill Judas Iscariot's office. I mean, Judas Iscariot didn't have an office of any importance. It was Jesus that had the office of importance. It didn't matter to have an election to follow Judas Iscariot. What mattered was the election to succeed Jesus. And all the early church sources don't mention Judas Iscariot's election. They mention James's election, but the Gospels focus on Judas Iscariot's election, which is a little bit of maybe a shell game going on there. And then I go into the descriptions of James, his death, the apostleship of James and the other brothers of Jesus, and all the various things about the various brothers, and introduce them to the world. And I think this has had a big impression because, first of all, very few people knew about James, knew that Jesus had a brother, and knew that there were other brothers, and knew that you could identify them. So I went through all that, and that takes 1,000 pages. People don't like that. People want to read an airport book, but you can't just do an airport book and say a few things, and people say, how do you know that? You got to lay it out there. Lay it out there so the public can understand it, give the public the sources so they can find the material, and also that it will hold up to scholarly criticism. Now, I think, though there's people who like to say things about this book, no scholar has laid a hand on this book. There's nothing in here that they can complain about because there's nothing in it that they can find that isn't correct.